The rain, the boy, and the stranger with quiet eyes, it was raining, but not the soft kind of rain that makes the world feel like a lullaby. This was sharp, angry rain, the kind that bounced off rooftops and turned dust into slippery mud. People hurried beneath umbrellas, jackets over their heads, eyes squinting, feet splashing through puddles. Nobody was looking around. Everyone was focused on getting somewhere, anywhere, fast. Okay, all except one small boy who wasn't going anywhere at all. He sat on the edge of a closed tea stall, knees pulled to his chest. His t-shirt soaked through, shivering not just from the cold but from hunger. His name was Ravi. He was 9 years old, but his eyes were older. They had seen too much. The thin layer of fabric on his bones did nothing against the wind that cut through the streets of Mumbai. In his hands, he held an empty steel lunchbox, not his own. He had found it 3 days ago behind a dumpster, dented and forgotten. Sometimes when he carried it, people thought he was just a boy on his way to school. Sometimes they gave him leftover food. Most of the time, they didn't even see him. Ravi watched people pass with hungry eyes. He didn't want much. It's just 2 pieces of roti. Maybe some dal, something warm. He'd had nothing but tap water since yesterday morning, and even that tasted like rust. He was about to curl back into himself, trying to disappear into the shadows, when he saw a man step out of a black car just across the road. The man wasn't holding an umbrella. His clothes were simple: a gray sweater, dark jeans, sneakers. He didn't look like someone important. But there was something about the way he moved, calm, focused. He paused near the fruit vendor's stall, not to buy anything, just to look around. Ravi didn't know why, but something in his chest told him this man was different. Maybe it was the way he didn't rush like everyone else. Or maybe it was how he looked at the world, like he saw it, truly saw it. Ravi stood up slowly, hesitating for a moment. His legs ached, and his pride fought against his hunger, but the hunger won. He stepped off the sidewalk, crossing the muddy road barefoot, gripping his empty lunchbox like it held treasure. The man was just about to turn when Ravi called out softly, "Bhaiya." The man turned. Ravi looked up at him. The rain dripped from his hair into his eyes, and he blinked, trying to speak clearly. "Can I have some food? I haven't eaten since yesterday. I don't want money, just food." The man looked at him, silent for a long moment. His eyes weren't sharp like most grown-ups when they were annoyed. They were quiet, like deep water. Then the man knelt, lowering himself to Ravi's height. Not squatting, not bending over, kneeling, like he wanted to make sure they were. "Equal, what's your name?" he asked gently. "Ravi, I'm Sundar. Would you like to eat with me?" Ravi blinked. He wasn't sure he had heard right. No one ever said that. People gave him scraps, leftovers. Sometimes threw food near him, like tossing something to a stray dog. But this man, this Sundar, had said with me. He nodded slowly. Sundar stood and reached for his phone, speaking into it softly. A few minutes later, another black car pulled up. Ravi watched, tense, wondering if this was some trick. Rich people didn't usually invite street kids into cars. Sometimes they pretended not to see them at all. But Sundar opened the door and gestured for Ravi to get in first. Ravi hesitated. Every instinct in his body screamed caution. Life had taught him that nothing came free, and kindness sometimes hid dangerous things. But Sundar didn't rush him. He just waited, calm, patient, eyes still steady. Finally, hunger overcame fear, and Ravi climbed in. The car was warm, too warm almost. It smelled like leather and something sweet he couldn't name. His skin prickled from the sudden change in temperature. He sat stiffly, afraid to touch anything. Sundar got in beside him and gave the driver a quiet instruction. The car pulled away, melting into the monsoon traffic. They drove in silence for several minutes. Ravi's stomach growled so loudly he curled into himself, embarrassed. Sundar didn't laugh. He didn't even smile in that pitying way people sometimes did. He simply said, "What do you like to eat?" Ravi stared at him. "I like chole bhature," Sundar continued, as if they were old friends talking about lunch. "And hot chai on rainy days." "What about you?" "Pav bhoji," Ravi whispered, "with lots of butter." Sundar grinned. Then that's what we'll have. They arrived at a small roadside restaurant. Not the fancy kind. No golden doors or suited waiters. Just a clean, humble place with metal chairs and steaming pots of food. Sundar asked for a corner table, waved off the manager's surprise when he noticed the boy, and ordered 2 plates of pav bhaji and 2 cutting chais. Ravi sat on the edge of the chair, nervous. The food came fast, sizzling hot and rich with spice. The smell alone made his mouth water. "Eat," Sundar said softly, placing the plate in front of him. "It's yours." Ravi didn't need to be told twice. He dove in, using the soft bread to scoop up the buttery vegetable mash, his eyes closing in pleasure. He simply sipped his tea and watched, like someone listening to music. When Ravi finally slowed down, cheeks flushed, belly full, he looked at Sundar and whispered, "Thank you." Sundar nodded. "You don't need to thank me, Ravi. I was once hungry too." Ravi blinked. "You?" "Yes," Sundar said, his voice quieter now. "I grew up in Chennai. We didn't have much. Sometimes there was 1 meal a day, sometimes none. My father worked hard, very hard. And still, there were days we didn't know how we would manage." Ravi's eyes widened. It was hard to imagine this calm, well-dressed man ever being poor. "What happened?" he asked. Sundar smiled, but there was sadness. Behind it, I studied. I read every book I could find. I asked questions. I failed a lot, but I didn't stop. And slowly, life changed. Ravi looked down at his steel lunchbox, now stained with bhaji. "Do you go to school?" Sundar asked. Ravi shook his head. "They kicked me out. No papers, no uniform, no parents to sign anything." Gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pen. He handed it to Ravi. "Start here," he said. Ravi took the notebook slowly, unsure what to do. "Write anything," Sundar said. "Your name." "Story. What you ate today. It doesn't matter. Just write. Every day." Ravi opened the notebook. The pages were clean and white and smelled like possibility before he could speak. Loud noise interrupted them. Sirens shouting, a commotion outside. Sundar turned his head sharply toward the window. People were running across the street, pointing toward a nearby alley. His body tensed in a way that made Ravi sit up straight. Then Sundar looked back at him. "Stay here," he said calmly. "I'll be right back." He stood and walked out into the rain. Ravi clutched the notebook tightly. He didn't know it yet. This moment, this simple meal, the stranger's kindness, was about to change everything. Because the man who had just handed him a notebook was not just Sundar, he was Sundar Pichai. And the alley outside held a secret that would drag both their lives into something far deeper. It's far more dangerous and far more extraordinary than Ravi could ever imagine. The alley of echoous rain still poured like the sky was trying to erase the city. From the window of the roadside restaurant, Ravi watched Sundar disappear into the crowd, swallowed by umbrellas and running feet. Ravi's fingers gripped the notebook tightly, knuckles white. Something about Sundar's face before he left, the stillness. The sudden tension in his shoulders had stirred something unfamiliar in Ravi's chest. Fear, yes, but also curiosity. And somewhere beneath it all, a strange sense of loyalty. To a man he had just met, he slid off the chair, wiped his oily hands on his shorts, and stepped out into the storm. The alley wasn't far. It cut between 2 buildings like a scar, narrow and dim. The shouting grew louder the closer he got. A group had gathered at the mouth of it, shopkeepers, drivers, a woman holding a crying baby, and one man waving his arms wildly, yelling. Something about a thief. Ravi had seen this before. Someone steals, someone chases, sometimes there's a beating. Sometimes it ends worse. But then he saw Sundar standing between the crowd and the alley's shadow, calm, motionless, as if he were made of stone. Water streamed down his face, and his glasses fogged up, but his gaze was steady. His hands were raised in quiet peace. "He's just a boy," Sundar said. A hush fell. Ravi pushed through the legs of the crowd to see who he meant. Crouched behind a pile of crates was a skinny boy, maybe a little older than Ravi. soaked, barefoot, face streaked with dirt. But his eyes, wild, afraid, were not unfamiliar. Ravi knew that look. "Stole from my shop," a man shouted, pointing furiously. "He took money from the till." The boy didn't speak. It just clutched a torn plastic bag and pressed his back to the wall like he wanted to melt into it. Sundar turned to the shopkeeper. "What did he take?" 200 rupees? "And what would you have done with it?" Sundar asked softly. "What kind of question is that? A serious one?" Sundar said. "Because he was going to eat with that money, maybe buy medicine, maybe disappear into the night and try to stay alive one more day." The shopkeeper's mouth opened, then closed. "If the law must be followed, then let it be," Sundar continued. "But if your heart allows, forgive him. It's not because he didn't steal, but because he's a child. And sometimes hunger speaks louder than conscience." Ravi stared, heart pounding. This wasn't a speech. Sundar's voice didn't rise. He didn't try to be dramatic. He just stood there, drenched, speaking like someone who had once stood in that alley too, the shopkeeper snorted. "Easy for you to say, wearing your fancy watch." "I can pay what he took," Sundar said. "But only if you promise to forget his face." A long pause. The crowd murmured. A few heads nodded. The shopkeeper sighed like he had just swallowed pride the size of a coconut. "Fine," he muttered. Sundar nodded once, then slowly reached into his pocket and handed the man a small folded note. Nothing flashy, just quiet dignity. The boy behind the crates began to cry, not loud wailing sobs, but broken hiccups of disbelief. Sundar walked over and crouched next to him. "What's your name?" he asked. "Karan," the boy whispered. "You have someone? A place to go?" Karan shook his head. Sundar looked at him for a long time, then helped him to his feet. He didn't touch him like people do with pity. He didn't scold or console. He just helped, as if helping was the most natural thing in the world. When Sundar turned, he saw Ravi watching from the edge of the crowd. "Come on," he said gently. The three of them walked away together. The crowd watched in silence. Some looked confused, a few looked ashamed, none followed. They ended up under a tin shed near a bus stop. Sundar took off his wet sweater, revealing a simple t-shirt underneath, and handed it to Karan, wore nothing but a damp vest and torn jeans. Ravi sat next to him, quietly opening the notebook and drawing the scene not perfectly. It's just stick figures, rain, a tall man between a boy and a mob. Karan glanced at him. "You draw?" "Just started," Ravi said. "Today. Gave me that," he added, nodding at Sundar. Karan didn't answer, but his eyes softened. Then Sundar asked something unexpected. "What if we did something more?" Ravi looked up. "More what?" "More than survive." The words hung there like a new color in the sky. "I don't have a house," Karan said quickly. "I don't go to school. I've stolen food before. Nobody cares about us." "But what if someone did?" Sundar said. "What if someone taught you things no one ever taught me when I was your age?" "Like what?" Ravi asked, curious now. "How to build things," Sundar said. "How to solve problems. How to use your story, your pain, to make something better." The rain eased, just a little like the world was listening. "You ever heard of Google?" Sundar asked. Karan and Ravi shook their heads. Sundar smiled. "Maybe that's good. Because before anything, you need to know yourself, not the world." Then his phone rang. He answered, listened silently, then looked at both boys with a strange expression. "I need to go to Delhi," he said. "Tonight. It's important." Ravi's stomach dropped, though he didn't know why. Something about those words sounded final. "Will you come back?" Karan asked. "Yes," Sundar said, "but not alone." "What does that mean?" Ravi asked. "Means I've seen something today," Sundar said, standing now. "Something stronger than money. Stronger than power. I've seen two boys who don't give up, even when the world turns its back." Then he reached into his bag and handed Ravi a card. Plain, white. His name, a number. "Keep this safe, and when I come back, be ready." "For what?" "For everything." He walked away before they could ask more. Ravi and Karan stood in silence. watching the man who had changed both their lives walk into the city, swallowed again by the storm. Neither of them knew it yet, but Sundar wasn't just going to Delhi. He was going to speak to the world, and somewhere behind microphones and boardrooms, decision would be made that would send ripples through the lives of millions and bring a spotlight onto two forgotten boys in the alleys of Mumbai. The fire inside the boy train had stopped, but its memory clung to everything. Puddles sparkled under dim streetlights, the smell of wet dust rose from the ground, and the city seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Ravi and Karan sat on the curb, Sundar's business card between them, like a tiny promise neither dared to believe in. They didn't talk much, not because they had nothing to say, but because something had shifted in the silence, something too big for words. Ravi couldn't sleep that night. Not that he had a bed to lie in. He curled up beside a shuttered pan shop, the card tucked inside his notebook, both pressed to his chest like armor. Karan slept nearby, one arm over his torn bag like a lifeline. Ravi's eyes traced the stars, peeking through the gaps in the clouds. He wondered what Sundar was doing now. Maybe he was on a plane. Maybe he was in a room filled with important people who only listened when the air smelled like money and power. But Sundar had listened to him, and that thought small, its quiet, glowing like an ember in his chest, made Ravi feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Important, in the days that followed, something strange began to happen. The city, always loud and hungry, began whispering his name. First, it was the chaiwala, who noticed Ravi writing in his notebook and gave him a half cup of tea, unasked. Then it was the old uncle who swept the sidewalk near the market and nodded at Ravi like he saw something different in him now. Even Karan, who had always walked with his head down and fists clenched, started to stand straighter, speak louder, ask questions. "What do you think he meant?" Karan asked one morning when he said, "Be ready." Ravi didn't answer right away. He was drawing a box in his notebook, not just any box, but one with wires, lights, buttons, a machine, a dream. "Be ready to not be invisible anymore," Ravi said quietly. Karan looked at the page. "That's a phone?" "Not yet," Ravi said. "But maybe someday." They didn't know it yet, but far away, in the glass towers of Delhi, a different kind of storm was unfolding. Sundar stood before a boardroom of stiff collars and tight eyes. The room was silent except for the hum of an overhead projector and the soft tap of his finger on a remote. Behind him, a giant screen displayed a photo, not a chart, not a graph, not a billion-dollar blueprint, just a boy, wet hair, shivering hands, a notebook in his lap. "This," Sundar said slowly, "is where our future begins." A few eyebrows raised. Someone cleared their throat. "Gentlemen," Sundar continued, voice steady, "we've spent years building tools that connect people. But what happens when the people we need to connect the most aren't even counted?" He paused, let the silence stretch. "His name is Ravi. 9 years old, no school, no parents. And yet, in one afternoon, he showed more curiosity, hunger to learn, and raw intelligence than I've seen in most conference rooms." He clicked again. Another image. This time, a stick figure drawing of 3 people in the rain, one tall, two small, and the word together scribbled above them in uneven pencil. "Want to build a program?" Sundar said. "Not just corporate social responsibility, not a press stunt. A long-term, real mentorship initiative for kids like Ravi and Karan. Kids who were never supposed to be seen. And I want our top engineers and thinkers to participate, to meet them, to teach them, to listen." A man in a gray suit leaned forward. "And what do we get out of it?" Sundar looked at him, not with anger, but with something sharper, disappointment. "You get a generation that doesn't inherit a broken world. You get leaders who remember where they came from. You get innovation that doesn't come from boardrooms, but from the streets, from necessity, from grit." Silence. Then a slow, single clap, followed by another. Not all said yes. Not all were impressed. But enough voices nodded. Enough hands rose. The door cracked open that had been sealed for years. Meanwhile, back in Mumbai, Ravi and Karan stood in front of something they had never seen before. A hotel lobby. Glass. Gold trim. Air conditioning. that smelled like lemons and new shoes. The guard looked at them like flies on a cake, already reaching for the walkie-talkie. But then Sundar appeared behind the sliding doors. "They're with me," he said. 3 words. And suddenly everything changed. The next few hours felt like a dream. Warm showers, fresh clothes, a buffet where Ravi almost cried over a bowl of rice so perfect it felt like magic. Karan, who had never used a fork in his life, tried to fake confidence and stabbed a dumpling that flew across the table. They laughed until their stomachs hurt, but the dream wasn't just about food or soft pillows. It was about what Sundar showed them. Next, a room filled with gadgets, laptops, tablets, screens full of code and color, and people, young smart people, who looked at Ravi and Karan not like charity cases, but like equals, like future teammates. "This is just the beginning," Sundar told them. "If you want in, you work. Every day. No shortcuts. No excuses. And no giving up." Karan looked uncertain. "What if we mess up?" Sundar smiled. "Then you'll be exactly like the rest of us." They began their first lesson that day. Not in programming, not in English, but in something deeper: confidence. It wasn't easy. Ravi still flinched when someone raised their voice. Karan still struggled to sit still for more than 10 minutes. But when they worked together, drawing, solving puzzles, asking questions, something happened. The room seemed to get brighter. But as the days passed, so did something else. A shadow. Ravi noticed it first. A black car parked near the entrance 2 days in a row. A man with a scar across his cheek who always seemed to be watching. And once, when Ravi stepped outside to breathe, he saw the same man whispering into a phone. He didn't tell Sundar. Not yet. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was just being paranoid. But late that night, as he sat by the window of his temporary room, notebook in hand, he felt it again, that strange cold feeling, like something was coming. He drew the man's face. In the corner of the page, underneath it, he wrote one word: remember. The shadow with the scar Mumbai had a way of swallowing secrets in the daylight, hiding them behind honking rickshaws and steaming chai cups. But at night, when the noise softened and the city exhaled, shadows returned to the surface. Slow, silent, watching. Ravi had never been afraid of the dark. It had been his home for years. But now that he had something to lose, warmth, safety, a dream forming in shaky lines, he noticed how long the dark could stretch. The man with the scar had a habit of showing up where he didn't belong, outside the building where Ravi and Karan were now housed, near the school van that picked them up for evening classes. Once, standing still across the street with a cigarette burning like a red warning, Ravi tried to ignore it, told himself stories. Maybe the man was just a guard, maybe he worked security. Maybe it was all in his head, but one night after lights out, someone slipped a folded note under their door. It was plain, no name, no signature, just 2 lines. He's not who you think he is. Not all stories begin in poverty. Ravi didn't show it to Karan. Not right away. He didn't want to believe it either. It's not about Sundar. It's not the man who gave them food, notebooks, and hope, without asking for anything in return. But the doubt crept in. Quiet as fog. Ravi remembered the way Sundar had spoken. In the alley, not just like someone who had been poor, but someone who had lived danger, who had stood between fists and fear without flinching, and that scarred man. He didn't look like some petty criminal. He looked like someone who knew Sundar too well. The next day, Sundar returned from Delhi. It was calm as always, but Ravi noticed a slight tiredness in his eyes. The kind of weariness that didn't come from work, but from carrying something heavy and old. They were sitting on the rooftop later, eating bananas and talking about the internet, a concept Karan still called the magical ceiling wire, when Ravi finally asked, "Did you used to know someone with a scar on his cheek?" Sundar's hand froze mid-peel. Silence. Karan glanced between them. "What scar?" Ravi waited. Sundar didn't speak for a long time. Then he sighed, looked down at the city and said, "Yes." "A long time ago? Was he your friend?" Ravi asked. Sundar gave a soft, bitter laugh. "He was my brother." Those words hit harder than thunder. You have a brother? Karen asked, stunned. Where is he now? Sundar said. Somewhere along the way we took different roads. He didn't explain, and they didn't press him. But something in his voice, that strange mix of sorrow and caution, stayed with Ravi long after the conversation ended. That night, the dreams returned. Ravi saw fire, not real fire, but the kind that crackled behind the eyes, memories that felt too hot to hold. He saw two boys arguing, one storming off, the other crying. He saw a pair of hands punching a wall, a child locked in a room, and then a broken phone. He woke up gasping. He knew it wasn't his dream. It was Sundar's, and it wasn't a dream at all. 2 days later, while Sundar was away in a meeting, the scarred man finally spoke to Ravi. He appeared near the tea stall across the street, same cigarette, same cold eyes. But this time, when Ravi walked past, the man said quietly, You think he's saving you? He's not. Ravi turned slowly. Who are you? I'm the part he left behind, the man said. The part he doesn't want you to know about, the part that built him. Why are you following us? To remind him, the man said. Remind him that no matter how rich you get, you can't bury truth. What truth? The man flicked his cigarette away and stepped closer. His voice lowered. Ask him what happened in Chennai. Ask him why he never talks about the fire. Then he walked away. Ravi stood frozen. The noise of the street faded. Somewhere inside, a storm began to rise. Later that night, he sat with Sundar. In the common room, the glow of a laptop painting both their faces in soft blue light. Sundar, Ravi said carefully, Can I ask you something real? Sundar looked at him. Always. What happened in Chennai? For the first time since Ravi met him, Sundar looked. Scared, he closed the laptop. Silence grew between them like a wall. Kern was already asleep, curled on a mattress nearby, breathing evenly. Sundar rubbed his forehead, then spoke. When I was your age, my brother and I used to run small jobs. Shine shoes, deliver packages. My father was strict, proud. He believed in discipline more than affection. Sometimes too much. He paused. One day, my brother got caught stealing, not food, not money, a radio, to impress a girl. My father lost it. He beat him badly. I tried to stop it. I set fire to the garage, not to hurt anyone. A distraction, but it spread, faster than I thought. And part of the house burned. Ravi's heart beat fast. Was anyone hurt? No. But everything changed after that. My brother left, said I ruined his life, said I destroyed the only place we had. I tried to find him years later, but by then he was someone else, and I became someone else too. Sundar looked out the window. The scar, Ravi whispered. Yes, Sundar said. He was caught in the fire trying to save our mother's things. He never forgave me. Not really. She didn't mean to. Doesn't matter, Sundar said. Intention isn't always enough. They sat there, two boys of different sizes, both carrying the weight of a past that refused to stay buried. Why are you telling me this? Ravi asked. Because I want you to understand something, Sundar said. Success doesn't erase pain. Kindness doesn't delete guilt. We don't become better by hiding our scars. We become better by facing them. Ravi nodded slowly. Outside, lightning flickered in the clouds and across the street. In the same shadowy spot, the scarred man watched, not with hate, but with something darker. Waiting, and in his pocket, he carried a photo. One he hadn't shown anyone yet, a photo of a boy Ravian behind him. In the corner of the frame, a woman with eyes just like his, alive. The photo that changed everything. Grave had always believed that memories disappeared when people stopped saying names out loud. That was how he'd learned to forget. Not suddenly, not with some dramatic gesture, but slowly, by trimming away the questions. Who was my mother? Where did she go? Why did nobody come back for me? But memories have a way of planting seeds underground. They wait, they grow in the dark. And sometimes, without warning, they bloom with thorns. That morning, the card Sundar. Gave him slipped out of the notebook, and something else slipped with it. A photo. Ravi blinked. He didn't remember putting it there. It wasn't printed on glossy paper, just plain newsprint. Old, folded, slightly torn at the corner. Knew that face instantly. It's not his own. The woman behind him, eyes like his, jawline like his, a tired, kind smile that curled gently. Like she didn't expect much from the world, but still tried to offer it something better. His throat closed. "Karan," he whispered, holding up the photo. "Look." Karan sat up on the mattress, rubbing his eyes. When he saw the picture, he frowned. "Where did you get that?" "I don't know," Ravi said. "It was inside the notebook. They turned it over. Someone had written a date on the back 8 years ago. The name Mira. The name hit him like a knock on a locked door. Didn't open. Anything. Not yet. But it made the handle rattle." Ravi stared at it for a long time. Then he made a decision. They had to find her. They went to Sundar that evening, hearts pounding like drums in their ears. Sundar was working late in a quiet room filled with screens and maps. When Ravi handed him the photo, he didn't speak, didn't blink, just held it in both hands like something fragile.
"Hey, where did this come from?"
Sundar asked quietly.
We were...
"Hoping you knew," Karen said. Ravi added, "The man, your brother, he's been watching. He said I didn't know who I really was. Said truth always catches up." Sundar looked away, eyes distant. "He wasn't wrong," he murmured. Then he took a deep breath, stood up, and pulled a file from the shelf. "You need to see this," he said. They sat around the table. Sundar opened the folder, and out came a page full of information that felt too official. To Cold, a child services report. Ravi's name was there, so was Mira's, and a note in red ink. Presumed dead after fire in temporary shelter. Body not recovered. Ravi froze. "She's not dead," he said, voice hollow. "No," Sundar said. "I found out a month ago, after I met you. I didn't tell you because... ... I wasn't sure how. And because your mother is not just alive, she's been looking for you for years." Ravi stared at him, words stuck in his chest. "Find me," she tried, Sundar said. "She was told you were gone, lost in the fire. She broke down. Ended up in a mental health center for months. By the time she recovered enough to search, the system had already closed your file. Life pushed her into the shadows." Ravi swallowed hard. He didn't know if he was angry or just cracked open. "She's in Pune now," Sundar said gently. "Works at a women's shelter. Quiet life. She doesn't know you're alive either." Karan reached out and held Ravi's arm without saying a word. "We'll go tomorrow," Sundar said, "if you're ready." But that night, Ravi couldn't sleep, because someone else wasn't sleeping either, across the city. In a dimly lit room filled with cigarette smoke and silence, Sundar's brother, the scarred man, stared at the same photo. He held another item in his lap. A letter, unopened, unsent. 8 years old. Addressed to Ravi, care of Mira, never delivered. He had carried it all this time, not out of love, not even guilt, but out of some twisted thread that still tied him to the boy who once played with broken radios and followed him around like a shadow. He looked at the letter and at the photo and finally made a choice. It was time to finish the story at dawn. Just before the van was set to take Ravi and Sundar to Pune, a message arrived. No name, no threat, just a location. Come alone. Bring the boy. Truth has waited long enough. Sundar stared at the screen. Silence deeper than usual hung between them. Karan read over his shoulder. "It's him, isn't it?" Sundar nodded. "Yes, I think he wants to say goodbye." Ravi said nothing. He was tired of half-truths. Tired of whispers. He wanted it all now. Whatever it was, so they didn't go to Pune. Not yet. They went to the edge of the city, to an abandoned warehouse that once stored old radios and televisions, the place where Sundar had first learned how to take things apart and put them back together, where everything had begun. The man was waiting. No guards, no threats. It's just him, older, scarred, and tired. He looked at Ravi first. He looked just like her, he said softly. "Like Mira?" You have her stubborn eyes. Why did you hide this from me? Ravi asked. I didn't hide it, he said. I protected it. You were too small, too vulnerable, and I was too angry to be trusted with something that pure. He turned to Sundar. He deserves to know it all. Tell him then, Sundar said. And the man did the real story. How Sundar wasn't just a poor boy from Chennai. He was once part of something darker, a gang that disguised itself as a shelter. It lured in poor kids, promising food and school, and used them for street crimes, pickpocketing, courier runs, distraction thefts. Mira had worked there as a cook. She figured it out, tried to leave. They punished her. She escaped with Ravi. Sundar helped them get away and burned the place down behind him. I didn't burn it to distract anyone, Sundar said quietly. I burned it to destroy the files. The names. The system that turned children into weapons. But you almost burned your brother, Ravi said. Yes, Sundar whispered. And he never forgave me, even though I saved him. The man looked at Ravi, eyes raw now, not angry, just haunted. She's waiting, he said. Go. Don't waste your years the way we wasted ours. He handed Ravi the old letter. It's the one that never arrived. Then he walked away. No apology, no redemption. Arc. Just a man carrying the weight of a life built on wrong turns. Ravi watched him go, then turned to Sundar. Let's go find her. The face at the doorway drive to Pune was long, quiet, and different. Not the same silence that came from fear or emptiness. This was the kind of silence that fills a space just before a song begins. Sundar drove without music. Ravi sat in the back, holding the letter like it might vanish if he blinked too long. Karan was beside him, a quiet anchor, flipping through pages in Ravi's notebook, rereading every line they had scribbled together. In the distance, fields rolled by in slow waves, and the sky, finally, after weeks of storm, had begun to clear. They didn't talk much. What do you say on the day that might change everything? Ravi read the letter 3 times before the car stopped. The words were simple, uneven, written with more hope than grammar. Dear Ravi, if you are reading this, it means somehow you found me. And if not, then maybe someone will read it to you. Someday, I'm sorry for the fire. I'm sorry I let go of your hand. I never stopped looking. I never stopped dreaming about your face. If you're out there, I am too. Somewhere, still waiting, still loving you. Mir, his fingers shook as he folded the paper. The shelter was a quiet building, yellow paint peeling slightly at the edges, flower pots by the door, and the smell of something warm cooking inside. It didn't look like the kind of place where life changed. But then again, nothing about life-changing moments ever looked like you expected. A woman opened the door. She wasn't tall. Her hair was streaked with gray. She wore a simple cotton sari and had flour on her hands. Eyes were soft, tired, and busy. The eyes of someone who had seen pain, scrubbed floors, stitched hope into other people's wounds. But when she saw Ravi, her hands froze mid-motion, her lips parted, and for a moment, she didn't breathe. Ravi stepped forward, the letter trembling in his hand. My name is Ravi, he said. But you already knew that. The sound she made wasn't a sob. It was smaller than that, a gasp, the kind of sound people make when a piece of their soul walks through the door without knocking. She dropped the flower. Bowl. It shattered, and then she ran to him. No hesitation, no slow cinematic embrace, just a mother falling to her knees in the dust, clutching a boy she had buried in her dreams for 8 long years. You're real, she kept whispering, touching his face like it might disappear. You're real. You're here. You're really here. Ravi couldn't speak. His voice cracked. But he didn't need words. They sat in the doorway, tangled. In each other's arms, while the world stood still around them, Sundar stood a few steps away, watching. He didn't smile, didn't interrupt. His eyes were full, and his hands were folded in front of him like someone saying a silent prayer. Karan leaned against the wall, blinking fast. "I didn't think I'd ever see something like this," he muttered. "Not in real life." Hours passed. Inside, over hot roti and soft-spoken stories, the pieces began to fall into place. Mira told them how she survived, how the fire took everything but her will to keep searching, how the system gave up faster than she did, how every face she saw on the street, every boy she passed, became a question. Could that be him? Ravi listened. Not just with his ears, but with the parts of his heart he thought had rusted shut. And when she finally stopped, he pulled out his notebook and handed it to her. "This is everything I remember," he said. She opened it with shaking. Hands inside were drawings. Stick figures, Rain. Pev Baji, Sundar, Karan, and at the very end, a new one. A woman, standing in a doorway. Arms, tears on her cheeks, and the word home written beside her. Mira cried again. But this time, they were soft tears, healing ones. The next week was a blur. Reporters came. Cameras tried to capture a story too big for headlines. Homeless boy reunites with mother, thanks to Sundar Pichai. That was the version they printed. But none of them really understood. None of them saw the nights before the camera flashes, the conversations, the rebuilding, the choosing to forgive the years that were stolen. And Sundar, he never stayed in the spotlight. He came to visit once. A small gift bag in hand inside it. 3 items, a new notebook, a digital tablet, and a photograph of Ravi. Karan and Mira, sitting under a neem tree, laughing. "This is just the beginning," he told them. "Your story doesn't end here. It starts now." Ravi looked up. "Will you still be part of it?" Sundar smiled, quiet and true. "Only if you let me." He turned to leave, but Ravi ran after him and did something he hadn't done before. He hugged him. Tight, grateful. Sundar froze for a second, then hugged back. No words. Just that a week later, the program Sundar promised launched. Not in theory. In reality, mentorships, scholarships, a whole wing dedicated to tech education for street children. It didn't carry his name. He didn't want it to. But Ravi's name was on the first classroom door, and Karen's was on the second, because some stories don't end in palaces or private jets. Some stories end in classrooms. It's in broken kids building unbreakable futures. In scars turning into maps, in mothers reunited with sons, and in strangers who stop just long enough to ask a simple question. What did you eat today? And just like that, a new story begins. The end.